Welcome to the Dangerously Divine podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Loren, entrepreneur, life coach, and your new spiritual bestie. We dive deep into all things feminine magnetism, mindset, and empowerment. Prepare to unlock your full potential and activate your feminine gifts. If you're an ambitious woman who's ready to stop playing small, step into your feminine power, and claim a life beyond your wildest dreams, then you're in the right place. So go ahead and turn up the volume. You're about to hear juicy stories, inspirational advice, and transformational tips that'll help you up-level your life and align with the divine goddess within you. More self-confidence, freedom, and abundance are all just a play away. Thank you for listening and enjoy this episode. Hello. Welcome back to the Dangerously Divine podcast. I'm Rachel, and today we are diving deep with the incredible Nellie Meadow. Get ready to unlock all of the secrets of your soul, align with the highest version of yourself. And today we're going to discover how your past lifetimes shape your present. Our guest today is no ordinary astrologer. Nellie Meadow is an evolutionary astrologer, transformational spiritual life coach, intuitive guide, teacher, and spiritual mentor. Welcome to the show, Nellie. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm so excited to talk to you about this. This is one of my favorite topics, so I'm excited that we get to dive into it today.
Yes. For those who are looking for a little bit more background information, I connected with Nellie over Facebook, and she did a tarot card reading for me. And it was so evident that Nellie is the real deal. She was talking about decisions that I had to make, which I've yet to make that decision. It was if I was going to move to Chicago or not. So there's no update on that front yet, but we did get a little bit into talking about my astrology chart, and that is something that we've yet to talk about on this show. So I'm really excited, and I figured that the best way to show all of you Nellie's gifts is by having her do a little bit of a dive in my astrological chart. We'll learn a little bit more about me, and then if you're interested in working with her, you can find her all on your own and get your chart read and speak to her about your past lifetimes. So Nellie, why don't you first kick us off with how you got into this world and how you found out that you had these gifts?
I have not been doing this my whole life. I know some people who've been doing astrology forever. That's not where I started. I started off as a math teacher of all things. And in recent years, really a few years ago, I started feeling like I needed to do something different with my life and got a degree in organizational psychology. I got into coaching, which was my concentration, and started coaching some different women. And they ended up, teaching me about spirituality. They were having trouble marketing themselves and they needed some coaching. And in coaching them, I got into their world where I started learning about the chakras and Reiki and crystal and oracle and tarot and astrology and all of that, which was all very new to me. Like I literally felt like I was living under a rock before that. It was all like, wow, there's this whole world. At first, I really didn't think I had any of these gifts. Like you asked how I came into the gift. I just knew, I'm a quick study and I was interested in the crystals and I was kind of curious about tarot. So I got into that. I got a tarot reading done for the first time a couple of years ago. And it was really fascinating. And I just thought to myself, I wonder if I could do that. And literally went and got my first set of tarot cards after that. And just started playing around with them for a few months. And I started taking classes. And then I also got interested in astrology at the time. And I started to notice that I was getting information that wasn't something I had, it wasn't coming from me. How do I know this information? And again, I didn't think I was one of those spiritual types. It took a long time to get me to realize, okay, I'm a skeptical person, but I'm seeing all of this. So it's not my logic. The intuition is taking over. And then I started to embrace the fact that I do have these gifts and I can help people and I can connect with spirit or their spirit guide and know what's going on. The tarot cards, my teacher always said, there's a magic to tarot, and it truly is. The right message would just come up and people would tell me you're spot on. At the same time, I was also learning astrology too. And there's so much similarities when you look at the different archetypes that connect with tarot and the different things in astrology. It all made sense to me. And I just embraced it and got into the North Node, which became my fascination. And if you look into astrology and you get into the nodes, it's all about your faith and what you're meant to do, which has been my obsession literally my whole life. Evolutionary astrology to me has been the most fascinating. I'm curious about why we do the things we do and how does it connect to our history, not just our own lives, but what happened before. And the past life. Hopefully that answers, but yeah, it's been an interesting journey and I've enjoyed learning it for me and also for others.
Yeah, that's a fantastic journey. And I appreciate the fact that you started off as a math teacher because I think it kind of shows that not everybody who gets into this world has to necessarily embrace their gifts right away. I know I first started learning a little bit about tarot when I bought a tarot deck myself during COVID, and I literally bought it from Five Below. They're like flimsy, cheap cards, whatever. And I also bought a book about tarot. I don't think it was from Five Below. It was probably from Barnes & Noble or something. And then I bought a journal, and I really studied on it. It's almost like a little bit different of a methodology to learning something through vigorous study, as opposed to just having the intuitive gifts. I think that no matter how you come to it, you still come to it. But I think it's much cooler, and like I can identify and relate to really teaching yourself some of these practices.
I mean, not everybody buys into things with spirituality or astrology in general. And I think that that's okay. Like, I do feel though in the last couple of years, just in my own exposure, there's been more people like who are embracing it and like not thinking I'm so weird that I'm into this whole thing and thinking that the planets are just the planets and they don't really impact our behavior. But I think there's more people that are really coming to like appreciate it and like want another perspective. And I think that's why a lot of people are like looking for this alternative method. So it's like, you know how you said you got those tarot cards? And whichever way you come to it, like it finds you. You were meant to find them. The magic isn't in the cards. The magic is in you.
I'm just fascinated talking to people such as yourself. It reminds me that I have this friend and he grew up super Christian. He didn't like the fact that like I went to psychics as a kid or, you know, things like that, because he very much was involved with his church, whatever. And we're still friends to this day. Even now, he does day trading and he trades around astrology and around the moon. And he's like, it has so much to do with the stock market. And I'm like, wow, the tables have turned. This is so fascinating. He probably knows more than I do now in this way. So yeah, it is more widely accepted, and it should be totally.
Well, it's so true, because when we talk about money, it deals with emotions. People make decisions in their emotions, and our emotions are heightened depending on what's going on with the moon. It also depends on your zodiac, well, especially the full moon and new moon energy hit people a certain way that we know the eclipse did. If you're a person who's a water sign, depending on where that moon is, there's a certain energy. When you're in Libra moon, you might be connecting more with people. If it's Cancer moon, you might want to chill and be nurtured and stay home. If it's Aries moon, you might want to be out there just taking action. And so you kind of think about that with what's going on. And if you know like where the moon is in that particular day, you might have a gauge for how people's behavior might be. Then you know better how to deal with them, because you know at certain points of the month, they're going to act a certain way because of where the moon is. And again, it's not like an equation that it's always like that for every single person. But if a person tends to be more impacted like that and you know it, you might as well use it to your advantage. And also like collectively, like when it's the full moon, we know people's behavior is off. So like people can get erratic and they might pull their money out, you know, because they're nervous. So it's like, you know, you just kind of have to protect against it. And as a day trader, you know, whatever they do to make their decision, they're on top of it.
Talking about past lives and maybe what that means to you or what that means to everyone else in spirituality. I know there's some people who maybe are like on the edge and don't necessarily like believe in past lives. So can you debunk some myths or some commonalities that you hear?
I can't necessarily provide the evidence, but what I can say is that based on like things that I've experienced, whether it's in a dream, whether it's in a meditation, whether it's looking at like my astrology chart or somebody else's, I've also gotten readings done as well too. I know that like my soul isn't here for the first time. I know that like, yes, I've lived this life for 46 years. I have these experiences, but also there's like these things that sometimes cannot be explained. And I think that's because our souls have been here before. They've had lessons, sometimes painful lessons, sometimes lessons that we have to learn from in this lifetime because they didn't get it right. They didn't figure it out. And so again, not everybody buys into like all this stuff with souls and reincarnation. And I don't know that if I ever exactly knew the answer to it, I felt like I was always open. And I think some people who tend to be religious could go either way. Some people who might be very religious might not buy into this whole concept. It's out there for interpretation. But I would say that it might be interesting for like a person who's skeptical to get one of these readings done, like get an Akashic record reading or like an ancestral reading. When I started looking at astrology and looking at my chart and other people's chart, I can get a really good image of somebody without even meeting them. I could just tell you things about your chart with who you are based on certain placement, certain things that might have happened to you or things that could happen to you. It's really hard to discount that. So I truly believe that we're here and not just for the first time. And our souls came into this lifetime with a mission. Like we came, and some people say, I have all these crazy challenges and my life is so rough and all that. But the thing is like the soul chose this lifetime because maybe the last lifetime was too easy. or the soul wanted a certain experience. So it asked for it, and then we're playing it out. And not everybody realizes that. So if you become spiritually enlightened, you know, like, okay, I did live previous lifetimes and I had certain things happen, and that's why I am here, and that's why I'm living this life. And if I need to clear the karma, like that's what I'm doing now. So when my soul moves on to the next lifetime, I can have a different mission, or I can have an easier go around, you know, and everybody's life is different. Everybody's chart is different. I personally, you know how you're talking about, like with your podcast is all about being empowered and all of that. And I really feel like if you understand yourself, then it makes it easier to live your life and not feel like a victim, not feel sorry for yourself, and just feel empowered. Like, yeah, I'm supposed to be living this life. I'm supposed to have these challenges, and I'm going to rise above it and live in my highest vibration. So I feel like just for me, even when I've had some tough moments, I just know that, okay, I signed up for this deal. And maybe some would say it's a raw deal, but that's what I have. So how can I look at it in a positive lens and reframe it and live the best that I can?
Yeah, that's a great answer. It makes me think back to when I kind of first entered this world of spirituality a few years ago. I was sitting down with my friend talking, and she introduced me to kind of all of this. And she asked me, she said, you know, how many lives do you think you've lived in the past? And I don't know if we're going to get into this, so I am interested to see if we see anything. But I was like, okay, I definitely know that I chose to be here. I feel like this experience, this day and age that we're living, like seemed like a party, a fun, cool time to be on Earth. And I was like, that's definitely like a conscious choice that my soul made. But I feel like in terms of like age of soul or whatever, I'm like a teenager. Like maybe do and don't know what is best for me in some regards, but also like do things spontaneously or like a little bit erratically or for the plot or for the fun of it. And so we definitely could point out, her and I together, of like, okay, that person is a new soul. Like they have so much, you know, that they need to learn about being here and being present, not just on Earth, but like their soul in general is like a baby. And then, you know, I think she was a little bit older of a soul, and she had come here to teach others. And that was one of the things that she taught me. So I'm interested to see if I'm correct in that.
Yeah, I don't know how many lifetimes you've had, but I just looked at your chart again real quick, and I noticed, because you were talking about the fun and the joy. So you have a stellium in your fifth house, and in astrology, the fifth house is the Leo house, and it's like the house of fun and joy and romance and creativity. And so you have 3 planets there. So that means you're a person, like that's important for you. Like you want to bring the fun, and you want to be around the fun. And that's like that teenager energy, like you were just describing. That's immediately what I thought of. And then I glanced at your chart again. I'm like, yeah, that totally makes sense, because that's what you're supposed to be living in this life. You want to make things fun for other people as well. You want to use your creativity. You want to be seen too, because the fifth house, like you have a podcast, right? Like you're choosing, you know, to be out in the world and interview other people. And you're bringing, you know, in a sense, fame for yourself, because that's like the Leo house, but also like helping other people too. And that's it's totally your energy. And I think you're right in saying that, like, all of us who have incarnated in this life, like we're here for a reason. And like, we need the people who are like very spiritually enlightened to help like spread the love, you know? And because I think when people are not feeling that love, then there's all this destruction, there's all this negativity. But I think you don't need a lot of people to like make a huge difference. And I think if you had even just a small number of people who can like spread like the love, the kindness, the joy, like that will emanate, and like that will impact people. And then, you know, we have like all this collective trauma, and it's like there's so much healing that needs to be done. So it's like if we could get the healing to the people who really need it, then that's going to like literally change the world. So I agree with you. We're here for a reason. Our soul have this kind of big mission to make things better for future generations. When our soul comes back, we don't have to do so much fixing.
Yeah, 1,000%. Especially like in today's world where like you can say one thing on social media and it blows up, and it could be factual or it could be complete BS, but we all have different ways to make an impact. And I've always said that like, if you can make a positive impact on one person, like it does trickle down to so many other people in so many other ways.
Yeah. It's for responsibility. And that's, you know, like when we talk about your chart, we'll take a look at how does that play into your reality, because a lot of people don't know this. A lot of people don't have exposure. For me, I was already studying astrology. I was learning the basics. As soon as I learned about the North Node, I had this major aha moment. And I was like, oh my God, that's probably my purpose. How does the whole world not know about it? I kind of made it my mission that I'm going to just tell as many people I can. I'm going to coach people. I made a Facebook group about it. I changed my coaching. So it's like, I want people to know, because this is so important. Like it shouldn't be a secret. And people sometimes like they want to know about their sun, moon, and rising. Yes, they're important too, but there's also so many other parts of your astrology that people don't realize truly impact them. I feel like it should be taught in school. I'm a teacher, and I feel like, don't get me wrong, math is important, but understanding yourself is more important, knowing how you connect with other people.
That would be awesome. Definitely a college class for sure. But at that point, I don't know, it might be too late. I was probably in college when I began to accept my astrology chart. So I'm an Aquarius, and Aquarius, like in all of the like cosmopolitan magazines or all of these like memes, is always like kind of A, forgotten about, and B, is always like the weird one. So like if it's like a cosmopolitan, like I remember like it was like prom dresses to wear based on your astrology. It was always like the ugliest dress was given to the Aquarius. And I grew up being like, oh my God, no, ew. Like I don't identify as an Aquarius at all. But I remember the last time we spoke, you were like, no, it has so much to do with other placements in your chart.
You don't always show up as your sun sign. Your rising sign, I believe, is Virgo. You probably show up with that Virgo energy, that grounded, get things done, perfectionistic energy. You might lead with that more than your Aquarius. So it could be that. You might not feel like the typical Aquarius because that's not who you are. And maybe also your Libra moon is like your heart, your emotion, which is like your moon. So you might come up with, like, that might be how people also see you. Like you're keeping the balance, you want harmony, you want everybody's views heard. So like all of those things impact us. In terms of the Aquarius, maybe the Aquarius thing that you're trying to do things that are good for the community. If there's something that needs a change, like Aquarius is that rule breaker. I'm going to do things that are for the greater good of the community. And like you're a powerful voice. So maybe your Aquarius presents more that way, you know, instead of like the weirdness, quirkiness, you know. And Aquarius likes to talk. I mean, you're a podcast person, right? So Aquarius is air energy. So, and as well, you know, with the Libra as well. So it's like you're talking, you're communicating with people. So you are using it, but maybe you're just not using it in the way that other people are, or maybe the stereotypical way would be.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Since learning about my big three, I definitely can identify with it more. Definitely a rule breaker and someone who likes to set the standard for people. And yeah, doing that in sort of a creative, different way. I've always said I'm not weird. Like people who are like, oh, I'm so goofy, I'm so quirky. I'm like, no, that is not me at all. But I do think that maybe comes more from my Virgo rising. Like I am a super organized person. I'm grounded. I like get shit done. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey. And yeah, to anyone who maybe hasn't figured out their big three or maybe doesn't identify with only their sun sign, I would definitely encourage you to look into at least those.
And like, even if you do an astrology reading with me or another astrologer, nobody's going to tell you everything you need to know in one session. It's literally just like scratching the surface, opening the door. And then you can kind of see like, okay, we started peeling back the layers. And if you want to know more, you can go deeper. Because it gets into knowing like so along with the big three, just knowing like where do all the planets exist in their zodiac and the house it. So that's one thing. It's also looking at transits, like what's happening in real time every day. It's looking at the connection between the planets, which are called aspects. And you can have squares and oppositions and conjunctions, and then you get different degrees. Astrology is a study that you could learn forever and never be done, which could be both exciting and overwhelming. When I look at a person's chart, I don't want to overwhelm somebody. As a teacher, I gauge the person and what they want to know. I put myself in their shoes and what they told me. And I want to say, like, what would I want to know if I was them? Like, what's the most interesting thing on the chart? I might say, like, okay, I noticed you have a certain stellium, and we'll take a look at that. Or like, you know, I might focus on the North Node, and so they can see that. Or maybe where their Pluto placement is could really impact them. Or Chiron, which a lot of people don't hear about Chiron. Chirons are emotional wounding. Sometimes like that, if somebody's had a lot of trauma, that could be helpful. So I talk about all different kinds of things. And when people ask me, I'm like, that's not such an easy answer because it really depends. We're all so unique, just like a fingerprint. Like everybody's chart is different because it was like that moment in time that you were born and where were the planets, where are the houses, what happened at that exact moment. So even Rachel, you and I have a lot of similarities in our chart, but obviously not everything is the same. We're different people, but we do have some similar things because I'm also Libra moon and Virgo rising. We share the same North Node and North Node, South Node in house and zodiac, which is really rare, but we have that in common. I think it depends on the person. I think knowing, like we were talking about the past lives, knowing about your node is really important because that's very faded. And also Saturn, which a lot of people don't hear about. They just know Saturn has the rings, right? We don't realize that Saturn is tied to your past. It's tied to your ancestors. It's tied to all the karma, like these like our contract and lessons, and could be twin flames, all this stuff. So it's like, that's the stuff that I'm more interested in than just like the basic things. Cause I feel like that tells a story that's like beyond this lifetime. And like, to me, that's fascinating. So like, that's why I like to get into it. If you're ready to be a guinea pig, we can talk about your things.
Let's get into it. I'm excited.
So yeah, so when I was looking at your chart, Yeah, so I think like different things pop out at me. And like I mentioned, the fifth house stellium. So in general, a stellium is when you have 3 or more planets in either a house or a zodiac. And so what that means is you have a lot of energy beyond the average person. So for you, that fifth house is like you're going to be more creative than the average person. And if you're in a job where you're not allowed to be creative, you're not going to be happy. Like you need to have creative control, like in whatever position you're in. You like to bring the fun, whether it's personal, professional. Like you want things to be like if you're traveling, you want to have fun experiences. Whatever that looks like for you, it's not going to be the same for everybody. But like that's important, for you. So I would, say looking at like your stelliums, like if you have that, and I think you also, let me look back again. You also have a second house stellium too. And so in astrology, second house it's like the Taurus house. So second house is like your money, value, possession. It doesn't mean like you're trying to become a millionaire. It's not what that means. But it's like things that, like you want to be like frugal and responsible and like pragmatic with your money. You value certain things like because the Taurus it loves beauty. It loves nature. So like in your house, not know what your house is set up like, but in your house, I'm guessing you have things that like are beautiful for you. Maybe it's flowers, maybe it's certain decoration. Tell me if that sounds like it, because I haven't seen your place. But like I would think that things that you value, whatever those things are, they're going to be like in the forefront so you can see them.
That's so funny. My house, I say it like is meant to heal my inner child because I have a pink couch, I have a cheetah rug, I have like a pink fireplace. Yeah. And so it is a lot of like beautiful material things that maybe like don't cost a lot of money.
It's not about like the amount it costs, but like what you value, the possessions that are important to you. And you want to be able to see it because that second house, so Taurus is ruled by Venus energy and Venus is about like love and beauty. And so the aesthetics are really important for you. And also like self-worth is another thing too. So it could be like making sure that you're being valued by other people. You want to put yourself in a situation where you're not going to get yourself taken advantage of. And so like people who have like that second house energy, so it's making sure that you're not doing too much for others because you're also Libra moon and Libra wants to always make everybody happy. So you have to just be careful that like you're setting the boundaries, not getting people to take advantage of you, making sure you're not saying yes all the time. Stellium in house. Like I feel like that's really a powerful lesson for you, like in this lifetime, to make sure that like you are good with your boundaries and that you are not always doing everything for everyone and like forgetting about yourself. Does that feel like something that you've been like dealing with?
One specific area where like I set a boundary recently, I was talking to my dad and he was expressing that something I did made him upset, but he wasn't expressing it in a kind way. He was talking at me, then talking to me and having a conversation. I set the boundary right there and I was like, look, I'm happy to hear your feelings. I always want to know how I can better myself and how I can communicate with you better. But I'm telling you right here and now, the way that you are talking at me is not going to be accepted. I'm going to shut you out. I'm going to turn you off. And it took him a few days, but he really recognized that. Sure enough, came back to me and called me and texted me whatever, and then apologized. Now to this day, he was complaining about like me not calling him enough. So I was like, hey, the phone works 2 ways. Like you can call me too. And he called me one day and I was like, oh, I have to go. Like my doctor is calling me. I'll call you back in a minute, whatever. And then I just got wrapped up in work stuff. And he texted me and he's like, hey, is everything okay? You said the doctor called and you would call back, but you didn't call back. And I was so grateful that he texted me that. Life gets busy. We're on opposite coasts. And I had to express to him, thank you so much for hearing the boundary that I set, for behaving differently, and for knowing, like not taking it so personally, and for knowing that like life gets in the way and that I'm busy. And thank you for like giving me the opportunity to make it right and call you immediately.
Right. I'm guessing when you were younger, that would not have been as easy to have done.
I'm an only child and I grew up as like a real people pleaser, the star of the show kind of thing. Yeah. So that was really cool and was definitely like a checkbox on my life that felt like a real deep achievement.
I had similar things with my dad because he also is a very tough personality and I had a hard time standing up to him for a long time until I realized I didn't have to listen to him anymore as an adult. His word is like God's word, And right. So that was an important realization for me, like to just kind of stand up for myself and feel empowered with him because I hadn't when I was a kid. And so I think it's like that same type of thing with the boundaries. And I think because we have that in our North Node, that makes it harder. And so I was kind of like looking back to like thinking about like, okay, what is the North Node about and South Node? Because I know you're curious about that. North Node and South Node, they're calculated mathematical points in the sky. And they are basically just like other parts in astrology, they're 180 degrees apart from each other. Usually when you pull up a chart, you see the north node. They don't always show the south node. It's 6 houses away or 180 degrees apart, whichever way you want to think of it. So for your case, yours are Aries, Libra, and they're 180 degrees apart. And so is your second house and 8th house. So when you look at the north node, it's all about your soul purpose. It's like what you're supposed to be doing in this life. It's the mission of the soul. It's why it came. And the north node is very hard to live. It's like, it's not our comfort zone. It's like our challenge. And if we can like eventually be living in this north node, we're going to get it right. It's going to get better. We sometimes tend to go to the south node because that's what we've lived in previous lifetime. That's where our soul feels comfortable because we've had many incarnations of like living that life. So it's like a piece of cake. It's like, let's say you did something like 10,000 times, right? They say like if you do something for 10,000 hours, you become an expert. So it's kind of like that. You've done something so much that you can do it in your sleep. That's your south node. So for you and for me, because we actually have the same thing is what I found out right when we started, your south node is in Aries. And so Aries, and this is just like you would know like what Aries zodiac is like. Aries is all about being the warrior. Aries is about being like the trailblazer. You initiate project. You can be impulsive. You can be, you know, like impatient. Like, I want to get this thing done. I'm not going to wait. And so like, it's whether you're living in the high vibration or low vibration of it. You know, sometimes like people think of like Aries energy as like, it's like that Mars energy. It can be very intense. It could get angry. So the point is for you that you've lived that life. You've perfected Aries. That's where you were in the south node. What you're supposed to be living in this lifetime is your north node Libra mission. And Libra deals more with relationships, whether it's in your romantic relationships, your friendships, your family, your professional, whatever it is. You're supposed to be in collaboration with others. You're going to do the best in this lifetime when you cooperate with other people, that you get them on board with your mission, that you ask for the help even when you don't want it, and you have harmony. So we can get into trouble because sometimes we can get into people pleasing, and sometimes we want everybody's view to be heard and all of that, but we're supposed to be doing that. Like, so we're supposed to like, that's in our heart to do it, but we just have to be careful not to like, you know, do too much of what other people want. But we're supposed to do it in a healthy way where we can cooperate with others. In this lifetime, you're supposed to be living in relationships with others. And it's not always easy finding those deep, meaningful soul connection, but we have to do that. I don't know if you've felt that for you, like as you've been kind of, because really we don't start feeling it till our adult life. I think you still have a little bit of time on that because you haven't gotten your second nodal return yet, but you're on your way to it. Once you get there, then I think things will start to come together more. You knowing it now, I think helps you versus me learning it a couple years ago.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I definitely related to the Aries part of what you talked about. I didn't really know how to set them or like how to talk to other people. And I had problems like working with others. Even though I would consider myself kind of a team player, I had a lot of trouble being understood. And people would take things that I said in the wrong way and offensively in my first few interactions with people, and came to a point where I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to do it myself. I'm better off to do it myself than trying to make myself understood. And it has been a big journey for me to check in on friends and make sure they're doing okay and make sure that things that I'm saying to them are being taken the way that I want to. And it's adding an extra layer of protection around the friendships, relationships, coworkers, peers, that I make sure that things that I'm saying are being understood in the right way. So I think that kind of ties into being more of that Libra energy, right? Do I have that?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, and I think also because of your other designation, Aquarius can be misunderstood. So there could be some of that too. And also Virgo rising. Virgo's like a very intensive energy as well. Virgo sometimes could be hard on themselves, could be hard on others. And like you have like your set lists and certain things, and if people aren't measuring up to it, that makes it hard too. So sometimes people feel that like they're not like in your standard, even though you never said that. And there could be like misunderstanding and miscommunication. So I think it's good that you're saying like you're checking in with people and making sure that what was said is what they heard and like you're on the same page. Because I feel like a lot of times it's so easy to misunderstand people. And with living like that South, I always call the South Node Aries warrior. Like in past lifetimes, we could have been like a leader in a battle. You know, we were in charge of a big organization, you know, whatever it happened to be. We were able to just like live life on our own and be successful. But now we're going to have a better life this time if we can do the opposite. Not that we have to forget the South Node. We don't want to forget it because that's like, you know, those are like tools in our toolbox. Like we have those, but we don't want to rely on them like as much as we did in the past. Because again, like we want to focus like on the North Node mission because that's what our soul wants to experience this time. So when we live in that North Node, like things start to fall into place. But when we go against it, it doesn't make it easy. You know, if it creates more roadblocks.
Yeah, I totally agree that it's maybe not always the easiest. And it's not our default, maybe the North Node, right?
Not your default, for sure.
But like it still has to be done because that's why we're here.
Yes. And, you know, that was a hard lesson for me too. And I could tell you for years, I always kind of had this question in my mind, like, if I could just find the right business partner, or I always wanted to find somebody to work with. It was like, it's always hard for me also to find somebody who I can work with because they're not me. And like, can I rely on them? Can I trust them? Will they understand what I'm saying? So sometimes I have said it's easier to doing it on my own, but then I'm stuck doing it on my own. So I've learned that even if they don't do it exactly, you know, like that's okay. And I have a couple different groups and I do have admins. There's no way I could do it all by myself. So I've, you know, gotten to know different people when I feel like I can trust them and they understand like what I want them to do. It, you know, then I have that, because if there's a time where I become MIA for a few days, whatever's going on, I still want the group to function. You know, if there's a certain whatever that happens to be, one of my other admins comes, you know, takes over, does a live for me, like it happens. So I think we just have to get more comfortable with reaching out. And I say this because it's not easy for me. So I have to constantly remind myself, like, okay, it takes a village. You can't do this alone. Even if you could, why do you want to? You know, like you could be making better use of your time if you just get the help in the one area. It can buy you back time in another area. And you know what? You're a powerful person. I look at your chart. You have a lot of cardinal energy. Cardinal energy is that leadership energy. So leaders understand that like you need a powerful team too. So I think it's like reframing it and looking at it that way. Like, yeah, I can do this by myself, but do I really want to? And do I need to? And, you know, maybe it's going to empower somebody else by allowing them to help me because they'll feel good about the fact that they did this for me. And then you just did something kind for somebody else. Yeah.
In addition to like the North Node and the South Node and, you know, all of those houses and placements, something that's big for me and all of my listeners, I think, are maybe going through their Saturn return. Yeah. So can we talk about that for the next few minutes?
I literally just did my masterclass a few days ago on Saturn return. So if anybody wants to join my group, I did it on my YouTube because I created a YouTube channel now. I just did my masterclass. And if you go to my group, I have my slide deck on there too. But yeah, Saturn return, I wish I would have known it back when I was living it, but unfortunately I now reflect on it after the fact. But Saturn return is a really powerful, pivotal time of life. It roughly, they say around 29 and a half, but like it could be a little bit before, a little bit after. So let's say 27 to 31 is kind of like the range. And this is like a life-changing time. It doesn't have to be bad. It doesn't mean like the world is crashing down, but it does mean that there's going to be some powerful things that happen to you within those years. So this is a time where people can get married, people get divorced, kids are born, you can get like a house, you get a new job, you finish school, a parent dies, a loved one passes away. I mean, there's so many big moments that happen to people during their Saturn return. And what I was doing in my masterclass, what we're talking about is like, okay, so I'm 46 looking back on it. I didn't know that back then. So how does it help me now? Well, they say that if you could figure out and reflect upon these lessons that happened to you back then, that you will have a better go around when you have your second Saturn return when you're 58. And then there's a third one when you're 88, if you make it that far. And so the first one is really like a wake-up call. Like you're starting to understand more about like who you are as an adult, and you're dealing with some really tough challenges. And we don't realize it when we're living it because a lot of times we're just surviving the life. We're not really thriving. But once you can take a step back and give yourself credit for what you experienced and say, what was this lesson? And honestly, when I was doing my masterclass a few days ago, I was making additional realization for what I had lived that I didn't even realize that are things I'm doing better with now. And I reflected back like, wow, that happened to me back when I was 30 and I didn't even realize it. But now I'm finally doing better with that. And so I think it's still powerful years later to look back and understand that time. So when you get to the second one, which is called like your wisdom call, the first one's the wake up call, the second one's the wisdom call. Now it's like, okay, I have lived a lot of life. How can I make, my next 29 years the best they can be? Yeah, it's like I encounter a lot of different people. I seem to definitely meet people who are in their Saturn return because that's when they're coming for coaching. They're struggling. There are all these things that are taking place and they don't realize, all of this. Saturn is the planet of boundaries and rules and like all the karma and these karmic lessons. And you meet people and like, they're like, you feel like they're your soulmate, but really maybe they're the twin flame or the karmic relationship. And then you get stuck in this thing and you get these like patterns. It's like a really tough time. And I'm glad now that there's more awareness about it. We can shine a light on it and see like, okay, like people are experiencing this. We don't have to live in all the doom and gloom of it. But how can we help people who are struggling? Like, what are some different tips we can give them? Whether it's journaling, whether it's meditating, whether it's just like sharing it with a therapist, whatever it happens to be. I think it's like doing something and embracing it, then allowing it to put you in a depressive state or have you get like into addictions or escapism, all the negative things that can happen because you're in the struggling time. And I think it's like so powerful. And then, also knowing where your Saturn is on your chart has other implications too, along with the Saturn return, because the Saturn return is a transit. That happens, every 29 and a half years. But we have Saturn on our chart in like a certain spot, and that's our lesson for a lifetime. Like that's a whole nother thing too, like knowing where your Saturn is. It's definitely important. It definitely does connect with past lifetime. And the lessons that you're learning now are important because those lessons did not get fully realized before. Everybody's got them. Everybody's got different ones, and that's just the mission. You don't have to feel bad about it, like I said, or feel a victim. Just know that that's what you're supposed to be learning, and just embrace it and look at it from that way.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. I definitely know some people on both ends of the spectrum that like have gotten into depressive states or like negative patterns just because it's a really challenging time of life, or also people who've like waken the fuck up during this time. I think I'm on the latter side of that, but it's really cool to know. Do you see where my Saturn is or how that relates?
Yeah, so I looked. Your Saturn is in 7th house Pisces. You can analyze both of those separately, and you can also look at it collectively. 7th house is the house of relationships. So it's like partnership, marriage, and it's like the Libra house. You already have this Libra energy anyway, but you also have Saturn there. Saturn is that planet of rules and regulations. It's like that boundary. And so when you have Saturn in the 7th house, that means for you that relationships are not always going to be so easy. There could be power plays. There could be an imbalance in past lives. Because again, we talk about Saturn in past lives. You could have been with a partner who wasn't good to you, who could have been overpowering or acting superior, could have been years older. Whatever it was, you didn't have a voice. You didn't feel empowered. And so I feel like in this lifetime, those lessons, they're in the subconscious. So you're even more careful as you approach relationships, and you kind of gauge people and how are they acting with you? Are you feeling like you have power? Are you feeling there's literally the Libra balance? And I think that if you're paying attention, you're going to steer clear of those people. Maybe you didn't always because you have it there, but maybe now as you're getting older, you're seeing the red flags and you're moving away from it. Does that sound like something that you've dealt with? It could be, it's not just in love. It could be in friendships. It could be in business relationships. It's like very close partnerships is that 7th house. Do you feel like you've experienced that in your relationships?
Yeah, definitely in the past. I feel like I was lucky enough to have my twin flame when I was really young, and he felt so familiar to me. And I think that that was definitely coming from a past life. And at first that familiarity felt good and it felt safe, but then it wasn't. And it got really bad and really toxic. And it's been something that, as I grow up, I'm really thankful that I had that early on. And maybe that I had that remembrance, because now, I can see bad partners from a mile away and I'm like, stay far away. But also, very, very protective of myself in not wanting to repeat those things, almost a little too much so where the pendulum swings so far, which again is a challenge of my life or something that I have to overcome in this lifetime.
Right. I mean, it makes sense. And you're right about the familiarity, because when we feel that and we think it's like this love at first sight or this deep connection, it's because you've known this person before. It's not always twin flame. It's not always karmic bad, but it could be. We have to be really careful about the relationships. And the thing is that sometimes we have to experience them. Like we can't always safeguard ourselves and avoid everything, because avoidance isn't what our soul wants either. We're meant to experience certain things and have those hard lessons, because sometimes how do you know that you have a good thing if you haven't had the comparison? You need some of those challenging, maybe toxic things. I know it sounds bad, but it's like sometimes it's like to really experience something good and be really appreciative of the thing that you need or the person who you need in your life. You almost have to see the opposite just so you can feel like both ends of the spectrum and know like, okay, that's not what I want. That's not who I need in my life, or that's not the kind of, job or situation I want to be part of. You kind of need that comparison. And you got to be careful not to go too much the other way. And it's understandable to armor up. But Brené Brown talks about it all the time. Like we protect ourselves and we armor up and we're careful and we watch our vulnerability because we've been hurt. We're careful, but it's like kind of like chipping away that armor and like letting your guard down when you feel like it's your person, right? And that takes time to be able to discover. So I think it's good to be careful, especially in this day and age, but just know that you'll just slowly chip away at it. And when you get to that person that you need.
Right. That's a positive way to look at it, as something that you need to experience. I mean, to my friends, I'm always like, oh, it's thickening the plot a little, or, it's adding to your story. But yeah, it's also like, you can't see the good without the bad. So, or the light without the shadow, something like that.
And your Saturn Pisces. So Saturn Pisces That means like really in this lifetime that you have the ability to be a healer in whatever way you're doing. It doesn't mean you have to do Reiki per se. It doesn't have to be energy healing, but whatever you're doing for others, like as a life coach, like you're helping people heal by using your words. And so that's that Pisces energy. Pisces is the oldest of the zodiacs. It's the wise man. It's like the sage. And Pisces can sometimes get like upset with the world because it sees like all of the bad. There's good, right? It sees the good, but it sees all of it. It sees the whole picture. And so Saturn and Pisces could get very upset with humanity and could get very escapist and want to like get like too much into the spiritual realm and like escape everything that's literally here. But you have to kind of like, use that lesson and say, hey, I'm on Earth. I'm not going to, be meditating and be gone for like half the day. I need to keep my feet on the ground and be grounded. And I need to see like how I can use my gift to help people, be in a better place and heal themselves. So like having your Saturn in Pisces allows you to do that. It's a big responsibility, like to help other people because you've lived some things that were challenging in your past. And now you're here. It's like this shamanic energy. Like you're here to help other people grow and heal themselves. And again, some people, we all do it in different ways. Like somebody can come to me for a tarot reading and that reading is like what they needed to hear. It gives them that different perspective. So I don't literally have to like put my hands on them and do that like some people do. We all have different ways to do it. And sometimes we're just talking to people with our word. And it's just like hearing a message in a certain way. Like that's the motivational thing somebody needed to wake up and get their life in order. So that's what you're meant to be doing. It's like using that Saturn for you. You're helping to heal others in the way of your gifts. Aquarius, Libra is all that talking energy. So you're meant to be healing people through your word, through the sense of community, which you're doing as a podcast host and as a life coach. You're in your mission now. You just have to keep going with it.
Fantastic way to validate me. Thank you. It reminded me as you were speaking about this like Pisces energy, about this video. I wish I knew the creator who made it, and I'm probably going to mess it up, but it just reminds me of this video that I saw recently where the creator's like, one of the most powerful things that you can do in healing is like know when to stop, because there's always going to be more work that you can do, but eventually you have to just go out there and live this new healed life and, maybe make mistakes and learn through other experiences or, from other people or in different ways. But I found that really powerful because that happened to me where I was on this like healing spiritual journey. And I was like, oh my God, like almost like a glutton. I was like, give me more, 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 more. And then I got burnt out and I was like, oh, too much. Like I feel too much. I know too much. Like I'm too spiritually woke. And I forgot for a moment to like actually live my life.
It's like feeling the pain for humanity and not being able to fix it, which is the heartache that Pisces can feel. Pisces energy is very emotional. It's that intuitive energy. And so you feel other people's emotions. It's very empathic. And then when you can't solve everybody's issue, that makes you upset. That makes sense. But it's just knowing you're right. You can only heal so much at a certain time. You have to live life. And you can only heal people so much because people have to do their own work too.
Right.
So you can do your end, but they have to take it from there, So you can't feel yourself accountable for somebody else's journey. And I say that because I know that's been a tough thing for me because I want to fix everything for everyone and it doesn't work like that.
Oh my God, this has been so amazing. Nellie, I know we could like talk about this for hours and go into everything. I think that was a good little get your toes wet kind of introduction session. I know that I'm super interested in learning more about my own chart with you. And hopefully the people that listen to this are also a little bit more wise than when we first started this episode.
Sure.
I'd love to give you the next few minutes to kind of plug yourself, tell us where people can find you and how to work with you.
Awesome. Thank you. I enjoy the conversation because as a teacher, I always love teaching other people. So I think you're doing a great thing. I think you have a great mission. And I think just spreading this kind of awareness so people know like, okay, this is another tool that you can use to understand yourself. So yeah, I would definitely love to connect. I always do an intro call with somebody. So I don't make anybody sign up for multiple hours until they get to know me and we can feel like it's going to be a good fit, even if it's just for one session. I want to make sure that somebody can connect with me and like, I'm going to be able to give them what they want. If somebody wants to go on to North Node and coaching, they can reach me there. My Facebook group is North Node Journeyist, so they can connect with me there. We could do a 20-minute video talk or phone call, whatever they want to do. And then I better understand what their needs are. They get to know me, and then we proceed from there. And whether they want a tarot reading or something with their numerology or astrology, or if they just want to talk. I have a mental health background, so sometimes people just want to talk and I could share information about trauma. So it's not always just like spirituality. And not everybody wants the same experience. I like helping people. I want to empower people to like understand themselves and live in their purpose. And so whatever they need, that's what we figure out.
That's fan. Thank you so much, Nellie. I'm going to put all of Nellie's links in the podcast description as well, so that you guys can just scroll down and click for whatever you're interested. Nellie, before we hop off, I like to end every session with a guest with a little quote, either the one that you left on your form when you first filled this out, or if something else has come to you just to leave listeners with, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I always steal Tony Robbins' words because they resonate for me all the time. Life happens for us, not to us. Every day I feel like I have that thought because sometimes we have some tough things happen and we wonder, like, why are we living this? And then I just remember, like, why did this need to happen? Because it's something that I needed to know for next week, or it's something that connected to like something 5 years ago. So there was a reason for certain things, and we don't always know it in the moment, but we have to believe that this is what our soul needs. And so I think if we look at it from that perspective, like I try to tie that quote into my life and also with astrology, and that allows us to think, live like in a more empowered way and more positively than just looking at like the doom and gloom of like, oh my God, woe is me? Why did I sign up for this deal? You did, and you might as well just deal with it and make the best of it.
%. I totally agree with that. Why be negative? It's going to happen anyway.
It's going to happen anyway. But again, it's like, okay, we have to experience those emotions too. Because how do we understand happiness and joy if we haven't felt the other emotions? So I think it's just, giving ourselves like the compassion and, saying that all those emotions are valid. We need them all.
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you again, Nellie, for coming on the show. This has been so insightful. And as I mentioned before, I'm going to put Nellie's links in the description so that you can find how to access her there.
Thank you. Well, it was a pleasure talking with you. I hope you learned a couple things, and I hope your viewers learned some things. And it was fun for me because I would love to be able to talk about all these things with astrology and spirituality. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Awesome. I will see you all next week on the Dangerously Divine podcast. Thank you for listening.